to help you improve your business. I'm Karl Barham with Transworld Business Advisors, and my co-host is Rico Figliolini with Mighty Rockets Digital Marketing and the publisher of the Petrie Corner magazine. How you doing, Rico?
Hey, Karl. Good, thanks.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about our sponsors today?
Sure, let's go right into it. Our lead sponsor I want to thank is Hargrave Fiber. They're a major company in the Southeast that handles fiber optics, internet connection at the speeds you need, and also because because they're right in the community, they're not your cable guy, right? You could call them up, they'll be right out there. They're very attentive to their client needs, whether you're a small business or you're a large enterprise business, whether your employees are working from home or home and office. They're providing all the smart office tools that you need to be able to do the work that your company needs to be able to get sales done. So check them out. They're hargravefiber.com, or you could go to hargrave.com/business and check them out because they have $1,000 Visa gift card going promotion, and you may be one of those if you hook up with them. So check them out. Thank you to Hargrave Fiber.
Thank you, Hargrave, for continuing to sponsor all of the podcasts here.
Yep.
Today, I'm excited to bring back a guest that joined us when we started this, if you remember, Cliff Bramble, founder and owner of Hungry Hospitality here in Gwinnett County. It's here to talk a little bit about his perspective and experience and thoughts on business, small business, in particular restaurant. 2020 has been a tough year for so many businesses. And in particular, you'll see a lot of restaurant business being impacted. But I'll tell you, being able to understand the history and what makes things work is a great conversation to just show how we could support small business and maybe even talk a little bit about what it's going to look like post-COVID. So, Cliff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, many people might already know you and so on, but I'd love for you to share your background with folks so they can understand the many things that you've done in your career.
Absolutely. So I live in Petrie Corners, so I'm around here quite frequently. I had the Noble Fin going for quite some time until COVID came in. So I've been in the restaurant business for many years. I co-founded Rathbun's Restaurants many years ago. And in the meantime, after that, ended up opening up Noble Fin. And now I just started a new company called Hungry Hospitality because Noble Fin, I had to close it, which isn't a good thing. But we had to do what we had to do to start with COVID. But being in the restaurant business and also real estate and also investing, I've been working with businesses for many years, and I really enjoy it. It's always a fun thing to do.
Well, that's what we're here to talk to is small business owners. We know it could be lonely owning your small business, and having others to be able to share ideas with, talk to, get ideas from, we know is very helpful. And so why don't we jump right in? And I'm curious, when you've been all your experience in a restaurant, what are some of the things that attracted you and many people to the restaurant business from a business perspective? Why do you think people get into that?
Well, there's a lot of glory in restaurants. A lot of people love to be in it. There's many people that will say, hey, I'd love to own a restaurant. I don't know about right now, but over the years, they always have. But there's always a lot of excitement. There's a lot of adrenaline that's going on. You're around some nice people all the time. You're around people all the time. And some people think it's just an excitement thing all the time. You're always excited. There's always something going on. And although there is, you still have to run the business with the HR and the hiring and all the other aspects that go into it. But the restaurant industry, it will come back. It's having a challenge right now, but it will come back, and there'll be just as many people in it.
Yeah, over the years, I think one of the things is I always associate restaurant with creating memories. People get engaged. They have family feasts, birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and no matter what is happening in the economy or the world, people are going to want to celebrate with other people. They're going to do it over food. And so we know that that's going to sustain over the long term. What are some of the things that people, when you think about restaurant, they don't know about the restaurant industry that you think they should for folks that have been in it for a while?
Well, a lot of people people think it's a fun industry. Number one, you have to be there. When you open up a restaurant, you really have to be there most of the time, especially if you're independent. If you're working with 5 and 6 other restaurant groups, or you own it and you have the luxury of hiring people because you're a very profitable organization, you will have less time within the restaurant and more time operating the company because somebody still has to run the company. But the options are is that people don't see the hard work, the sacrifices that go into owning a restaurant. If it's your kid's birthday and you own a restaurant and you're open and it's Friday night, you probably have to be there. So
Yeah.
it just depends on what people's version and definition of fun and excitement is. But there's a lot of hard work that you have to be there all the time.
You know, I remember when we did a podcast not too long ago about your travels to Italy,
Oh, yeah,
and
that's fun.
yeah, that was fun. I mean, you shared some pictures. You talked about the food and all that. Do you miss any of that? Do you miss being I know it's only been a little while, but sometimes I feel like people leave a business and it doesn't take long for them to miss it, like a few days even. How does that
Yeah,
feel?
it's interesting you mentioned that. Somebody asked me that the other day, and it was just yesterday. And he said, "Well, are you going to get back into it?" And I said, "Listen, I've been doing this for about almost 40 years, and I'd love to say that I want to jump right into it, but I have to tell you, I'm having a good time not being in it right now." And so, what you do realize is all of a sudden you realize all those things that you really couldn't do over the years and you missed, all of a sudden they're back at you. But you do miss the fun of the excitement on a nightly basis, meeting all the different people, because you do meet a lot of people in the restaurants and you have a lot of friends in the restaurants or acquaintances. But the other thing you miss is you miss the good food. So,
Yeah.
you cook at home all the time now,
Are
especially
you
with
really?
COVID.
That's funny.
So I'm curious. I'm curious when all COVID-19 started to happen. Where did you first hear that something was happening? How soon did you hear something was happening? What was your first thoughts and reaction to that?
Well, I'm involved in investments and financial side as well, and I started watching it in December, to be honest. And so in December, I really watched it, and in January, I became obsessed with it to a point where I was up at 3:30 in the morning reading news from other countries from that all the way to the east or the west, wherever it was, that was already happening, and I was watching it. So for the month of January, I watched it and I read a lot of information about it, and I kind of warned a few friends of mine. I said, if this comes over here, restaurant wise, we may end up having a big problem. Now, I didn't know how big of a problem it was, but watching it escalate, I took a lot of screenshots. Basically, when the John Hopkins first started tracking it, and
Mm-hmm.
there was 2 people. I have a screenshot with 2 people in the United States have it, and then it continued to go up and up and up. So, for me, I started watching it in January, really, really more so than December. But when I had over at Noble Finn, I did tell my staff in January, I advised them, I said, listen, guys, if this comes over here, it's going to affect everybody. So start saving your money. And actually, quite a few of them thanked me later on. They said, "Man, I can't believe that, but we did save our money, and thank you very much." So I watched a lot of it in January, and then obviously in February when it started to pick up, it just continued. I think the financial markets, in my opinion, kind of ignored it in January,
Mm-hmm.
but just paying attention to it, wondering what was going to happen on the hospitality side, it took a mind of its own, and obviously where we are now today.
Yeah, I remembered you actually being one of the first ones to talk about it, and we were chatting, and you were starting to do that in early March, late February, early March, but I don't know that people really understood how long this would be around, and we all didn't know enough information about how we responded and how it
Absolutely.
mitigated. There was that. Remember the time there were countries that had a spike and then they got it under control, and everyone thought that that's what happens, but decisions and choices and behaviors and all these things played in, and we're a big country with a lot of complexity to it, 50 states, and a lot of different approaches to tackling it. So when you knew that it was going to impact your business, I know there are things you can do generally. Is there anything looking back you'd advise the restaurant industry as a whole, or people that are leading large in the food and beverage space, things that a year ago, hindsight's always 2020, things that a year ago, things that could be done to prepare if something like this were to happen? What would be some of the things in the food and beverage space that good business people could have done?
Well, one of the most important parts, really, for me, was making sure you had enough cash flow for in a situation like this, for an emergency situation. And I've worked with my accountant, and it's very interesting making sure that you have enough cash flow for 3 or 4 months. And most people, we're all in the same boat. Most people in the United States only have 2 or 3 months worth of funds saved. In a restaurant, the same exact thing. You do have to treat it as a business, because that's exactly what it is first. The fun of the restaurant has to come second, but having the cash in bank and making sure that you have enough for emergency situation, honestly, it helped me tremendously this time. Now, obviously, you cannot predict what's going to happen, how far along this is going to go, but there still are, we're still in the pandemic. There's still restaurants that are having challenges, especially in different segments. So, when it comes down to it, in my opinion, no matter what business you're in, you always have to plan 2, 3, 4, 5 months worth of cash flow to make sure that you have that, because when you need it and you don't have it, you can't get it.
Let me ask you something. I don't think the restaurant business is immune to things, right? The listeria outbreaks, the salmonella outbreaks, those are common. Every day there's always a recall somewhere in the country for something, especially romaine lettuce. It's just right. So,
or lettuce.
Right. Well, romaine lettuce from Arizona, I guess, or wherever it comes from. It's like that one place. But so you have all that going on. So, and then you have the pandemic on top of that, because you have the normal stuff like that. So do you see this coming back? I mean, they're talking about it coming back again. I mean, should restaurants start planning out for this type of thing beyond the money? How do you plan health-wise? How do you keep things clean? And, not that in a pandemic like this, it may not matter, I guess, the cleanliness, but, what do you see there?
Well,
I
wish I had a crystal ball. I really do. But, restaurants in general are clean. We clean them all the time. You have a cleaning crew, or you have an outside company who comes in and cleans it. So it really depends. But you still have to remain diligent on what you're doing, and you have to continue to train your staff that's there. Make sure the management is on guard. Make sure that everybody's paying attention, because what happened to me over at Noble Finn is really the reason why I ended up closing the first time in March, was because somebody walked in, and then they had a party of 10, but they came from out of town. They called up 2 days later and they said, "Hey, by the way, I think I may have COVID. You may have to tell all of your staff." So that was a real big eye opener for me when I'm dealing with hotel guests from the Marriott locally here, and the international companies that are around Peachtree Corners and Gwinnett. That was a big eye opener. So, keep being diligent about listening and watching what's going on, and listening to your staff, because your staff will tell you a lot of what's going on. But more importantly, you have to continue to remain diligent and be clean, and make sure you're paying attention to everything around you. You can't just be paying attention to your 4 walls within that restaurant. You have to be paying attention to what's going on in the business world as well, because it does affect restaurants.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Early on, information was flowing from so many sources to help guide you on restaurant safety and protocol. What was the right source to listen to? How do you figure out who to pay attention to?
That goes right about now too. Still trying to figure it out. You know what? The Georgia Restaurant Association has a great page on COVID. So, any restaurant or an individual or an employee of a restaurant or a hospitality field, they can go on to the Georgia Restaurant Association webpage, and they have a great COVID. It's a webpage with all types of resources on it. So that was something that I really paid attention to, because they were very keen on keeping that up to date on a daily basis. Even though every day something came out differently, they were very good at keeping their website up.
What did you find useful, the other resources that the association provided? I mean, obviously the restaurant industry is a bit different than other industries because of the employees, and just the nature of sustainability and all that product. When it came to the CARE Act, to PPP, to loans, to payroll, when business is not happening, was that any of that useful to you? I mean, I know you did a lot for your employees. God knows. I think anyone that lives in Peachtree Corners knows that Cliff Bramble, Noble Finn, you really employed your employees as long as you could.
And the community.
Yeah.
We did. Honestly, I mean, we did pay attention. When the CARES Act came out, I was very much aware of that coming out 4 or 5 weeks ahead of time, with my fingers crossed, because I told my staff the same exact thing. Hey guys, if this comes in, I'll be able to help you guys for this much longer. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, I kept a lot of the staff on. I think 26 staff members on for the 9 weeks that we were closed, and they got their paycheck. And that was important to me, because when we opened back up, every one of those employees was back there to work, which is a great feeling. So, so yes, the other items that were out there, and the people that, friends of mine in the business world also, from my banker to my accountant, we were all kind of talking about the same exact thing. So we all helped each other. And there was a lot of guys in the restaurant business that I spoke with as well. We had a few, what are they called? The Zoom meetings, right? We had a few of those, which were pretty cool, because everybody really helped each other. And I think that's what the industry is really needing right now, is people to help each other, being in the same industry.
Well, was it a little scary at one point when they were sort of changing the rules of the game a little bit? Like you had to spend it all in 8 weeks, and then you could spend it in 24 weeks. Maybe some of it's forgiven, maybe not some of it. The formula was changing. Was any of that scary to you?
You know what? Scary could be a word, but confusing is more the word. It was confusing. There's no question about it. I mean, you try to become an expert at this stuff, because you're learning about it, but you're trying to learn as much as possible. And I have several email friends that would send me information. Hey, this is what's going on. My banker would send me information. I would go to treasury.org. I would go to all the different government websites and pull down the latest information. But man, confusing is the word, because, one day you're going, wow, this is fantastic. And next day you're up and down. And honestly, you think you lose sleep when you have a restaurant. Go through COVID and own a restaurant. You'll really be losing sleep. And that's probably with any business too.
Right.
I wondered when you reopened and people started coming back, what were some of the the response the community gave as people started going back out to restaurants, and as you walked around town? What was your general sense and feel how people felt about it?
We opened back up May 25th. It was 8 weeks after we had first closed. And I think we were one of the earlier ones that we opened up. But I felt at that time it was probably a good time, because I didn't know how long this was going to continue. But the people who came in, I have to tell you, we had a very, very supportive clientele, and a lot of the people who had frequented the restaurant over the years, they were the first ones back. Yes, there were some people that came in with masks, yes, at the very beginning, but we did everything that we possibly could to make the people feel comfortable. But when it comes down to it, the people who came in, they were very supportive. They were very happy that the restaurant was back open. They enjoyed the food, and they came back a couple times. But as the confusion set in, you saw less and less of them.
Yeah. I know people are happy now. If you fast forward to today, restaurants are open and people are going out and eat. Yes, the world's changed a little bit. There's a little bit more spacing and so on. But I'm looking in the future. There's a short term where, until vaccines are available and so on, we're going to school dealing with this. We're working dealing with this. We're living our lives dealing with this. What do you think the restaurant industry is going to look like over the near short term? And I'm going to ask you, what do you think it's going to look like a little bit further out? How does this change how business owners approach food service, delivery, in dining experience? How do you think this could change it? And any of it for the better?
The restaurant industry, I think right now is changing on a daily basis, but we've gone through a lot of different changes in the last 6 months. Let's face it. We went from being like, for example, you got quick service, you got full service, you have fine dining, you have fast food. And what happened for me, for example, was, we went through the whole process of, okay, let's see if we can continue with the sales. So you started to go stuff immediately. And then from there, you started selling stuff online. And then people started ordering it online. But now you go into the future and all that stuff is still happening, whereas a lot of people are eating outside. But let's face it, it's 95 degrees outside, you know? At nighttime, it's fine. I know a couple places that they set up their patio and outdoor front parking lots, and they look really, really cool. And people do dine in them. But the future-wise, I mean, you're looking at home delivery. You're looking at more chefs cooking at home, chefs from restaurants maybe doing meal preps, and that's already happening. There's also a lot of virtual cooking classes as well that's going on, where chefs or restaurant owners are doing the virtual cooking classes from their kitchen, and they're doing a Zoom cooking class basically. So the nice part is it's working and people are going with it. What's going on in a year from now, I don't know. I mean, there may be some consolidation, but there's also a lot of companies out there with some pretty deep pockets that are looking for good brands to purchase with great locations, because the restaurant industry, it's not going anywhere. It will consolidate, it will change, but it's going to come back sooner or later. It will come back. But we are dependent on the hotels, just like hotels are dependent on us. And I know in Petrie Corners there's still at least one hotel that I know of that is not open. But the business people in this area, the less traveling they do, it does provide a challenge for what's going to happen now or in the future as well.
I'm curious. In New York, I saw some areas of New York City shut down the streets, allow the restaurants to go out into the streets, where they get the advantage of spacing, and they're able to deliver a different experience. But also, do you think there's a future in figuring out a way to leverage outdoor space in eating for the short term? And then I'm sure, but over time it'll go in there. Have you seen any innovations in that area?
Most of the cities and the towns have really eased the restrictions on the outdoor dining. I know Petrie Corners has, so that has helped tremendously. It's really up to the building departments, up to the coding, and also how long this is going to continue. Hopefully there's a vaccine where we can all say, okay, in 6 months, 8 months, this is all done, and people are back dining in air conditioning rather than sitting at 95 degrees.
Yeah.
Well, I think that this has shown us, though, that this can happen again, right? I mean, this is just, this can happen again. And it doesn't take long, right? Transatlantic flights. I mean, by the time anyone really knew what was going on, we were already deep into it.
Yes.
You were able to see it coming, maybe, so were other people, but obviously some people ignored it. And it came and it slapped us in the face. It was really bad in Italy, and Greece, and some of the other countries in Europe. But like you were saying, things change, right? Yeah, I think there's more ghost kitchens going on now.
Absolutely.
Right? And to explain that to some people that don't know what a ghost kitchen is.
Yeah, what is a ghost kitchen?
Well, there's a place called Prep Atlanta over by Spaghetti Junction, which they have. I don't know how many. I'd like to say there's about 75 to 100 different 100 square feet. Some are 80 square feet kitchens, and I've been in two of them. One of my old chef has a food truck, and he took me into one of his places, and man, it was pretty cool. But basically, they're doing all the prep there, and then they basically will deliver it to somebody else. I know Elon Musk's his brother is heavily involved. He raised only about $500 million to start these virtual kitchens around the United States. So the virtual kitchen, it could be something where you have a restaurant where Noble Finn used to be, for example, and have 4 or 5 different kitchens only in there, and basically you order everything online and you just go pick it up. So it remains to be seen, but I think that virtual kitchen definitely has a huge lifespan coming up to it.
If you see what's going on with like Domino's Pizza, right? The pizza industry is really good at this. They were set because most of their stuff is delivered anyway, right? To a degree. So Domino's I think it's Domino's, right? There's no sit-in; it's all delivered. Right? It's all curbside or pickup or delivery. You're seeing more of like what you said, and I'm seeing uh, companies that are doing 4 different brands within a ghost kitchen. Like they own the whole thing, but they're doing 4. So they're pizzeria, Mexican, Chinese. They own all 4 brands, let's say, and they're in some hole in the wall place that's conditioned for a kitchen, and they're selling, right? I mean,
Delivery only.
yeah. And then you said your chef started a food truck, right? So I'm
He
seeing
started,
more of that. Yeah.
and I'll tell you what's interesting. He goes to neighborhoods too. He goes to different neighborhoods where, when all of a sudden, when this whole COVID came in, obviously the business parks had disappeared, or the parks are there, but the people weren't.
Yeah.
And so he ended up going to neighborhoods where they would call him, and they'd have 40 or 50 people there, and he'd serve them on like a Tuesday night.
Wow.
Yeah, we saw a few of those. Those are we ordered dinner when they would pick neighborhoods from different restaurants, and we thought that was fabulous. But I've got a question that might be more technical, since one of the biggest costs for restaurants is the space, the real estate, the space you're in. Do you think this is going to have an impact on commercial real estate, being able to charge the same rates if you can't have as many people in a space? How do you think that's going to affect that part of the business model for restaurants?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, but you know what? When it comes down to the per square foot, the restaurants are going to move out, and restaurants live off of what your sales are per square foot, and also what your rent is per square foot. And if you have a large restaurant and the rent is, $40 a square foot, in Georgia, in Atlanta, it's probably a lot less than other parts of the country, but you also have a sales forecast for that specific restaurant square footage. So knowing what your sales are going to be, or what they're forecasted, and compared to what they are, the rent will be, and it's especially if you only have 50% seating capacity, yeah, it's going to provide a challenge without a question. So there are going to be landlords out there trying to charge more rent. It depends on how bad somebody wants a location. If somebody wants to pay for it and they want to be in a restaurant, if they have 4,000 square feet and they need to do $600 a square foot, which is on the medium